Hello, YouTube. If you don't subscribe to my channel, please subscribe because every time I do a video on a movie, atheism, or politics, whatever, this is whatever channel, whatever works channel. So click click subscribe, and today I want to talk about I want to review some movies that I think are not only overrated or underrated, but I want to talk about movies which have been wrongly criticized and wrongly critically acclaimed. Number 10 on my list is a definitely film that was both underrated, overrated, and wrongly criticized by movie critics. 1 Hour Photo. If you haven't seen this movie, it's from 2002. It stars Robin Williams as a photo processor at a 1 Hour Photo kiosk stand at a Save Mart store, and there's this female woman. There's this woman who has been a longtime customer of Psy since her son was 2 years old. And Psy has seen this kid grow up through pictures. And if you're a kid of this day and age, what I'm talking about is you would take pictures with disposable cameras, and there were, hold on. This is what I'm talking about. But for the people who have seen the film, you probably missed these, the way they develop cameras. But yeah, he does this. He develops films for people. But like I said, this one lady that he's got to know as is probably one of his best customers. But you feel sorry for him, but at the same time, you feel very creeped out because she orders 2 copies. He puts 3 because he brings home a copy for himself. But at the same time, it's a very eerie film. At the same time, it's a very sad, depressing film because Psy is a very lonely guy, but at the same time, he's doing so much of this creepy shit. And the nightmare scene, I won't say what happens, but the nightmare scene is fucking scary. So, if you have not seen 1 Hour Film, I would suggest seeing it. Number 9. Now, I think The Hangover 2 was definitely wrongly critically acclaimed. A lot of critics says, oh, this is funnier than the first one. No, I'm sorry. But if you're gonna shoot a movie in Bangkok, at least shoot it in more impressive areas than where this was shot. This was shot as if they took the places that were in Good Morning Vietnam and made them into strip clubs and bars. But so anyway, The Hangover 2 is a very disturbing film. It's a mentally disturbing film. Although there are some Sid Caesar sight gags in there, but you have to have a real good eye for comedy in order to spot them. But besides some of the Sid Caesar gags in it, but the film overall was more vulgar than the first one. It had tons of dick jokes in it. The first Hangover jokes had an equal amount of dick jokes and vagina jokes. It had an equal amount, but in this one it was like so many dick jokes that it was like too disgusting. So the second Hangover 2, I wouldn't even recommend watching it. If you've seen the first one, they should have stopped with the first one because the 2 sequels after it were just not worth it. Number 8. This film, I would have to say, was critically acclaimed, but I don't think it should have. I like Woody Allen films, but I just did not like Blue Jasmine. I'm sorry, but Blue Jasmine was supposed to be a dramatic comedy, a dramedy, but it was it was not a comedy. It did not live what it was hyped up to be. I like Woody Allen films, but I just don't like Blue Jasmine. Blue Jasmine makes you feel like you want to have a gun next to you, and so you can blow your brains out after watching the film because it's that depressing. But overall, I will have to say Kate Blanchett, who did play the main character, she did win the Best Actress role, and she should have. But I think the storyline was just too depressing to watch. I mean, it's just too depressing to even think about it. Number 7 on my list, it was a very wrongly critically acclaimed film. Daniel Craig plays 007 in Skyfall, or should I say Skyfail, because Skyfall was the worst James Bond film ever made. Ever made. It was the worst James Bond film ever made. Now, I'm a James Bond fan. I love the James Bond films. James Bond and Davy Crockett were my childhood heroes. And I can watch any James Bond film and enjoy it, but Skyfall, I fell asleep on it. I'm a James Bond fan, and I say if someone asks me about Skyfall, I love every single James Bond film ever made, but Skyfall put me to sleep. Skyfall is bad for multiple reasons. Here are the reasons. 1. Daniel Craig could give a shit about James Bond at this point. He's so tired of playing the character. Daniel Craig is used to playing the bad guy. I mean, when Casino Royale, when the opportunity came for him to play the good guy, he said, okay, I like James Bond, yeah, I'll do it. Then he did Quantum of Solace, then he was like, I want to do something else, but like, no, we have you for a 3-film deal to play James Bond. And when it gets to Skyfall, he plays the most boring James Bond in film history. Of all the Bond films, this is the most boring James Bond film of all time. Regardless of people say, oh, it's a great story, it's a great story, it's so filled with action and adventure. No, you're not a real James Bond fan. If you're a real James Bond fan, you know it's ripping off not only the originals, but it makes the women character. No wonder why the rate of women who liked the new James Bond films, because the women were stronger characters. The women were stronger characters, and with this one, was that number 6? Yeah, if it was, yeah, it was number 5. Number 5 has to be one of the most overlooked movies of all time. Casablanca. It's not a recent film, it's a very old film. I shouldn't say old, but it should. But it's a great classic. If you have not seen Casablanca, watch it. It's a great classic. It teaches a real life lesson in it. And people refuse to watch it. It's too long. It's too boring. Watch the film. Watch it as many times as you have to, but it's a beautifully made film. Number 4. I have to say, it was very this was based on the story of one of Ed and Lorraine Warren's case. time, there is so much science to back up than religion. But anyway, this movie was very interestingly written. It was scary, and it was rated. I like the fact it was rated R for being scary and not for nudity, violence, and cursing. This movie had, I think the worst word it had in it was asshole. Other than that, it was a very interestingly written film. It's based on a true story, so if you're saying, oh, this was based on a fault, no, it was based on a true story. There's newspaper articles, you can look on Google right now, and it's a true story. That was number 4. Number 3, I had to put it on this list, but it's one of my favorite Robin Williams films. When I was growing up, in 1997, a film came out on VHS, which changed my whole life. Well, at least film-wise. It stars Robin Williams as a nutty professor, and he plays this professor who teaches Albert Einstein-ish science at a college. I think it's Cambridge. I'm not sure. I have it on VHS, but when I think of the film, I always think the college is Cambridge. But if it's something else, I apologize. But Robin Williams plays this funny professor who creates this thing. There's an experiment that goes wrong with this piece of slime, and this piece of slime, after he wakes up with his hair like Easter head, a race like Easter head, he sees that this piece of slime has its own personality. He sees this piece of slime is so cool that he takes it wherever he goes, and it's called Flubber for a reason. And he calls this thing Flubber. And it's a very funny movie. It's a family film. And if you are a Robin Williams fan, this is a definite film to have in your Robin Williams collection. Next to Good Will Hunting, Bicentennial Man, Dead Poets Society. Dead Poets Society is number 2. This is another Robin Williams film that I was introduced to recently. I've heard it was a great film, and it is truly a great masterpiece. Robin Williams plays a professor, but a poetry professor, and he takes, for the first lesson, he takes his students to the school lobby, and he makes them look at these old photos from students before, and he says, take a look at these pictures. Look familiar? They were men who dressed like you, had the same haircuts as you, and had the same hopes and dreams as you. Look at the pictures and see what they say. And that's not the only great part about the film. And there's a scene where he stands on a desk. I'm standing on a chair right now. You can't see my face. Don't look anywhere else. But he stands on a desk and he asks them, "Why am I doing this?" And a kid says, "Just to stand on the desk." No. And he recites the words. No, he doesn't recite the words, but he says, the reason why I'm standing on this desk is because to show that you need to reach higher hopes and levels in life. Once you stand, this is what I want you to do before you leave class. Stand on the desk and reach for something higher in life. And, of course, you can't watch Dead Poets Society without watching the famous scene towards the end "Oh, Captain, my Captain," and all the kids start to stand up on the desk. Not all of them, but most of them. And Robert Williams just looks at them. "Thank you, boys." And then the movie goes to the credits. But that's why The Poet Society is number 2. But my number 1 pick of all time is May the Schwartz be with you! Spaceballs. Now, when I was younger, I was introduced to this movie. I'd seen Young Frankenstein when I was younger. I thought it was funny, but Gene Hackman wrote it, and not Gene Hackman, Gene Wilder wrote it. But can you imagine if Gene Hackman wrote it? If you're blue, you don't know where to go to. How about you go where fashion sits? Put on the Reds! No. Gene Wilder wrote it and Mel Brooks directed it, but this film is written and directed by Mel Brooks. Spaceballs is a 1980 something film, and it is so funny. It is hysterically funny. It has the voice of Joan Rivers as Doc Matrix, and that's the reason why I'm doing this movie as well, because Joan Rivers was such a comedic icon, even in films. She was hilarious. She did the voice of Doc Matrix. I mean, you have Lone Star. I mean, played by, the name just left me. Barf, played by John Candy, where he goes to Doc Matrix and, Princess Vespa. Barf! Not in this car, you're not. And that was ad-libbed by her. He's like, "No, my name is Barf. I'm a half man, half dog. I'm my own best friend." I mean, it's sight gags like that. In that film, it's vocal gags and sight gags which make the movie hilarious. So, those are my top 10 lists of films that were underrated, overrated, wrongly criticized, and wrongly critically acclaimed and critically acclaimed. So, see you guys.